Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Doc Hamels, and you are watching Destination Chautauqua County. In a series of interviews with political candidates for a variety of positions here in Chautauqua County, and we are on series number 6, and I am going to welcome Mr. George Borrello. May I call you George?
Yes, please.
All right. George, welcome to the show, and
Great to be here.
we'll see. No, it'll be fine. You're running for the office of County Executive.
That's correct.
And Mr. Ferguson was on last week, and we chatted with him. So today's your opportunity to do the same. Okay?
Thank you.
And George, what I'd like to do is ask you to talk a little bit about yourself, because folks, as we say here, we read about you, we might listen to you on the radio, but we don't see your face, we don't see your expressions, we don't really know a lot about you as a person. So this is your time. Let's talk about George.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's probably one of the most difficult things is to kind of talk about yourself in these situations. So I'll just kind of give you a brief overview of myself. I was born and raised in Silver Creek and Fredonia. I'm a 1985 graduate of Fredonia High School and a 1989 graduate of Purdue University. I started my own company in my early 20s called Top Shelf Marketing. Started really the company from nothing and focused on selling products and services to the hospitality industry. I grew that company to a nationally recognized supplier to the industry. And in my 20s, I was actually dealing with some of the biggest names in the hospitality industry and the beverage industry as well, including Bacardi, Jim Beam Brands, to Disney and Marriott.
Wow.
And when I turned 30, I actually merged my company with a company out of Connecticut called Progressive Specialty Glass. And we grew the company together and became known as one of the largest suppliers of logoed drinkware items in the nation. We actually supply, and I'm now retired from that company just a couple months ago, and we actually supply all of the glassware for Hard Rock Cafe worldwide and quite a few other well-known household names. So that's kind of the quick summary of my business life. I became a legislator in 2010. I ran in 2009, really because I wanted to get involved, and particularly involved in the hospitality and tourism promotion in our county. I felt that we weren't really promoting our natural assets enough. And then as I got more involved, I realized that there were some important infrastructure issues when it comes to our lakes and waterways, and really became a champion for that as part of my job as the chairman of the Planning and Economic Development Committee. Also, I was a founding member, and am still the chairman of the Lake Erie Management Commission, which was the first time we had a group speaking with one voice on behalf of the entire Lake Erie watershed in Chautauqua County. So I'm very proud of the things that we've accomplished, including getting dredging done in our harbors. We've leveraged millions of dollars, and we were able to get dredging done. In some cases, where it hadn't been done in almost 20 years. So we worked together instead of little pockets of individual groups trying to get something done. We got together, created a bigger need, and had success by doing that.
When you say we, who do you mean?
I mean the other members of the Lake Erie Management Commission. We had representatives from the 3 harbors, Cattaraugus Creek and Sunset Bay, where I live, town of Hanover, the Dunkirk Harbor, and representatives from the city, and then Barcelona Harbor. Okay. And then on top of that, also representatives from other areas and other stakeholders, the sport fishing industry, the agriculture industry, and so on and so forth. So when I say we, I'm talking about the broad spectrum of people that are impacted by our lakes and waterways. Great.
So if I got this right, you built a great business and you retired, and now you want to be county executive. What is wrong with you? Usually people say after all that work of developing a business that it's time to kick back a little bit. But
well, and I guess I would have to put retirement in air quotes, which I can't do on the radio, so I'm glad I can do it here.
There you go.
And because I really did that with the purpose of wanting to become a full-time public servant. So, yes, I did retire, but not to sit in a rocking chair.
Right, I know exactly what you mean.
So,
people think because I retired at a young age, at 55, and people say, what are you going to do? And I go, well, I got a lot of life to live yet, and there's a lot of cool things to do, like be a TV producer or TV host or whatever. But I mean, there's life after retirement for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And my wife and I are both very active in a lot of local things in our community. We're both members of Kiwanis. My wife is on the Boys and Girls Club board. She's the president of our Sunset Bay Homeowners Association, on top of being general manager of operations for Sunset Bay, for all the operations at Sunset Bay. So in the summertime, she manages almost 200 employees.
Wow.
So we're very active in our community and an active part of economic development in Chautauqua County.
Okay, great. Wow. With your first business there, Top Shelf, what kind of products were you working with?
Well, so it's an interesting story, I guess, and without getting into all the details there, because this is about government, not so
Right.
much about business.
But people might want to know.
Sure, and I appreciate the opportunity. I basically, after college, I started to work for some guys that owned some restaurant and bar areas in the Buffalo area, and found that there were lacking supply of a lot of things. So I was able to find some interesting, unique products, and my actual first product, now remember I was in my 20s at the time, was basically a plastic test tube as a shot glass.
Okay.
And when we supplied those to the businesses that I work for, some other bar owners and restaurant owners said, well, where can I get those? And I said, well, I'll sell them to you. And that's how my business got started.
Okay, so you were the intermediate between the manufacturer and the company, the
Actually,
restaurants?
not really, no. What I did was I found a supplier for the test tubes, and I found a company that could print the logos.
Okay, take it to the next level.
Yes, kind of created my own business and then developed the marketing around that. So we actually put the product together, and we're not technically the manufacturer, but the the owner of the completed package.
Very good. Okay. All right, so you are now retired, and how did you end up deciding to run for county executive? You wanted to be civil servant, you wanted to serve your community, but how did that happen? I mean, did somebody go knock on the door and say, hey, George, would you consider being county executive, or is this something you've always wanted to do? Or?
Well, as a legislator and being a very active and vocal legislator, of course, there's always people that are saying, well, hey, you should really be county executive someday. And
I thought you liked
yeah,
me.
exactly.
I've had those conversations.
Well, and to that point, I guess my biggest advocate and the person that really had the longest conversation with on this was our current county executive, Vince Horrigan. Vince and I talked for over a year about it. And, I said, Vince, it's... I enjoy what I do as what I call a citizen legislator, still being able to serve the public, but with my feet still firmly planted in the private sector. But he really convinced me that, there are great things happening in Chautauqua County, and we're on a good path, and that he's really done a great job, I believe, as our county executive, and he wants someone in his place that can continue that legacy and that progress, which is why the theme of my campaign is elevating Chautauqua County, because I truly believe we have wonderful things going on here, and it's my job to elevate it to the next level.
Awesome. Okay, so Vince is no stranger to the show here, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think, in fact, the candidate or two before you that was here, not for county executive, we were talking just about what this theme of Vince wanting legacy and so forth is that we stand on each other's shoulders. We just don't do this by ourselves, so we build. So that's nice to hear. Okay, so you want to get into some issues that I'm sure that you've debated to ad nauseum so far. I know that there was a possibility to debate here, but you all chose to be interviewed with a kinder and gentler me. I'm a very good moderator when it comes to debates, but that's okay, because I do realize that probably by the time you get closer to the election, you probably have debated each other 4 or 5 times, and what more can you say?
Yeah, in fact, and it was nothing personal with you. And Mike and I are on very good terms. We speak on a regular basis, and we were up to 6 debates. And
That's
we said,
a lot.
Yeah, and
That's
so
a
we
lot.
said, at this point, going forward, we kind of agreed that that's really enough.
Why would you want to not be on the only live debate TV show? I understand. I don't take it personally. Well, we're overdone right now, folks. So unfortunately, no. I told the guys here that I actually do enjoy this a little differently, in a whole different way, because I get to know you as a person, and we can laugh together.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get into the meat of Chautauqua County and,
Sure.
and what your thoughts are on some things. So the one that keeps popping up constantly is drugs, the drug epidemic. George, I've talked to Vince, I've talked to Joe Gerasi, Kathy Young, Andy Goodell about this and other folks. We've had people that are in the business of helping people. This is really exasperating. This thing is not going away. It seems like it's getting worse. So as county executive, I know there's only so much one person can do, but leaders lead. So what would you do in this issue?
Well, the first thing I would have to say is I've actually made a couple of proposals on this, and you're right, leaders have to lead, which is why I proposed something called the CARE Task Force, which stands for the Countywide Alliance for Enforcement and Rehabilitation. And what I have done well, in my opinion, as a business person and also as a legislator, is facilitate and get people together at a table. That's really what's gotten us the success we've had, being one of 6 finalists for this $20 million municipal consolidation and efficiency competition. We got 23 different municipalities together.
That's no small task.
Exactly. So what I want to do is lead and facilitate. And so this task force will, for the first time, put law enforcement, the district attorney's office, the Department of Health, social services, mental hygiene, our hospitals, our drug treatment centers, including the peer groups, all together at one table. And let's talk about what we have right now, where the gaps are. Because what we tend to do is we create these silos. And I was talking to somebody just recently about the drug problem, and they're like, I can't go to another task force meeting or another advocacy group meeting. I'm going to too many already. So let's get everybody together at the table and let's pool our resources.
Okay, I see. It's duplication.
Yes, and one thing we have to understand is this is a huge problem that affects everyone. I personally don't know anyone who hasn't been directly or very closely indirectly impacted by
Absolutely.
this, so myself included, by the way. So, everybody wants to help, everybody has good intentions, but now we really need to focus and organize and really strategically use our resources and making sure that everybody understands what the other group is working on and that we're all working together towards the same goal. And we have to start, most importantly, with prevention, because unfortunately once it gets to rehabilitation, it's a very difficult task to get those people to off drugs permanently. So this task force would be a kind of a key cornerstone in creating that. But there are people out there that think this drug issue is, well, it's not related to me, it's not related to economic development, it's
Oh
not
my
related.
gosh.
It relates to everything.
Everything.
And we have to have a qualified workforce here in Chautauqua County, and that means people that can pass a drug test and show up to work every day. Those are the kind of things. So if we don't attack this, we are not going to have what we need to be ready, and workforce that is ready to bring new jobs here and to bring economic development.
I've talked with folks in the industry world, and don't quote me. Folks are looking right now. I'm not running for office or anything like that. But they're saying that half of the applicants that apply for jobs can't pass the drug screening.
Yeah, in fact, there are jobs right now here in Chautauqua County that go unfilled for that reason. And also someone who is in that difficult of a situation isn't going to be able to get the right education, whether it's training and skills that they need to have those jobs.
Right.
So it is a cornerstone of economic development that we address this issue as quickly and effectively as we possibly can.
Okay, I'm going to ask a hard question.
Okay.
Why hasn't this been done up till now?
I think part of the problem is that we've kind of been in denial as to what the real numbers are. When you look at it and you start talking to people, there's been almost a 500% increase in people being diagnosed with opioid-related diseases. It is now the #1 killer of people under the age of 50 in the United States. Yeah. And I think numbers were being underreported. I'm not saying here in Chautauqua County necessarily, but across the country, because when someone has a heart attack, was it reported as a heart attack, or was it drug related?
Right.
When someone crashes their car and dies, so there's
root causes, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I think now we're starting to realize 2 things. Number 1, the drug companies were lying to us that these aren't addictive. And number 2, they finally in New York State has gotten their arms around the fact that we can't be handing someone 120 Vicodin for a broken thumb.
Right.
We now have controls here in New York State where you're not going to be able to get more than 7 days worth of an opioid prescription for acute pain, not chronic pain.
Right.
That's a different thing. But if you have an injury, you look at Alex Falk, which is such a sad story. He got hit in the face with a hockey puck and ended up, long story short, dying from a drug addiction and drug overdose. Mm-hmm. So we have now gotten our hands around. The first thing to solve any problem is to have your hands around the cause. Mm-hmm. I think we now finally have our hands around the cause.
One of the sad statistics I also heard was that Chautauqua County is #2 this is not a good statistic, in children being born addicted to opium or opioids. So where do you go as county executive with something like that?
You know, again, when you're a good leader and a good manager, you have to know what you're good at, and then you have to have the right people in place to deal with those things.
Good point.
Okay, I can't personally tell you the answer to that question, but I can tell you that the answers are out there, and we have to have, again, when we have all these people at a table, facilitating conversation and leading and setting a direction will be my job. So every one of those difficult questions will be addressed, but will be addressed by the right people that have the right resources.
Great. You mentioned leaders lead, and we were talking right along with that. So what is your leadership style? How would you qualify that?
You know, I am not a micromanager. That's first and foremost. You know, I'm a firm believer that the captain of the ship can't be in charge of swabbing the deck. You know, and
you get more done that way,
exactly. Not that I'm afraid of hard work,
Right.
but I'm saying at the end of the day, I want to empower people, and I want to make sure that they feel empowered. There's a great book that I've read. It's called Good to Great. It's a business book, but it really applies to everything. And it's about how a company gets to a certain point. You know, if you're a struggling company, you're looking for anything and everything to you know, to make your company better. But if you're a successful company, how do you go to the next level? And some of the same root causes are preventing that, creating a barrier. And one of those things is not having the right people in the right seats on the bus. You know, and that's really a critical point. We need to make sure that we're utilizing everyone's maximizing their skills, their level of skills, and putting them in the right seat on the bus. You know, that's the type of manager I am. I want to empower people and give them the ability to make decisions. Because one of the critical mistakes that most managers make is you make somebody responsible for something, but you don't give them the power to actually do something about it.
Right on. Okay, we can move along with maybe another topic. You really touched quite a bit on business growth and create opportunities. So let's say it's November 8th and good news, you get elected, and if you had the ability or the power to make changes in that particular area, what would you do? I mean, people say the taxes are too high, or we don't have this, or we don't have that. What would you do?
Well, there's a number of things. First of all, I have an initiative of that in my first 100 days in office, I'm going to visit 100 businesses and organizations. And this is not a dog and pony show where we're going to go in and take a photo op and leave. We're actually going to go in there with a survey, and we're going to find out what are your strengths, what are your assets, what are your needs. And that's going to create a database of very powerful information, so we can now tailor our needs and tailor our economic development strategy around the needs of those 100 businesses and organizations that are leading Chautauqua County. That's number one. So I want to start with that type of information so we can make sure that we're addressing it. Number two is we really need to look at how we're marketing ourselves to the rest of the world. You know, I built my business on sales and marketing. And my business was a niche business. I created something that other people didn't have for my clients. And we need to do that in Chautauqua County. You know, people can talk about, well, we need to have an Amazon.com distribution center, and we need to have this. And well,
how do you know that?
Yeah, exactly.
Says who?
Yes. And the thing is, every municipality in the country that's within a few miles of a major airport can support an Amazon.com distribution center. What do we have in Chautauqua County that truly makes us unique? And there are a lot of great things. First of all, we have a long and strong history of food processing. We're closest to the largest source of fresh water in the world with the Great Lakes system, and we draw water from there. And this is a tremendous asset because down here in the south end of the county a few years ago, we lost a pet food processing plant because they didn't have water. They put all these plants together and then they were held hostage. It's the Saturn Pet Care plant. The project fell apart because they were being held hostage by the closest source of water that wanted too much money for a facility that was going to use a lot of water.
Wow.
So, you know, we need to plan things strategically. And one of the other initiatives that I have is called the Economic Development Alliance. This is very important to me. What this is I want to have everyone involved in economic development, municipalities, different layers of government, not-for-profits, all meeting together again on a regular basis and discussing a strategy that has a unified strategy. So now when somebody like a Saturn Pet Care comes to town, we may have to say that we need to shop these guys in an area in the north end of the county because that's where the water source is. And conversely, when we have a manufacturer come to town that would be best suited in the south end of the county, we need to make sure that that's being directed to the right space because we have the right amount of land in this particular business park or this shovel-ready site.
Okay, so people are listening right now and they say, I thought that was the job of the IDA. So What's your response to that?
That's a good question. First of all, the IDA is definitely a countywide agency, and I'm on the IDA board right now. But each leader in each county executive has certain strengths. Vince has a fantastic background in the military, leading the Red Cross and so forth, so his strength is in that area. My strength is in business and building businesses. So I will spend time leading the IDA and setting the agenda that I believe is going to maximize and give us the shortest, quickest path to development here in Chautauqua County.
Okay, good answer. I'm sitting here going like, well, so because we were talking about non-duplication, but okay, that makes sense. All right, so business growth, more opportunities, bring in things, it builds the tax base. So where does taxation fit in all this thing? I mean, quite frankly, it's like I get a little weary of listening. We need to cut taxes because that does something, and then we raise taxes, that does something else on the other side. So I haven't ever come to terms which is the right way to go. So what is the right way in your mind?
Okay, well, let me tell you what I'm a strong advocate for, and that is reducing the layers of government here in Chautauqua County and reducing duplication. I'm chairman of the Regional Solutions Commission. The Regional Solutions Commission has had some great success in downsizing government. It actually grew out of a crisis in Forestville. You remember a few years ago, I was the county legislator that got the phone call saying, we're going to have a 455% increase in our property taxes.
I remember reading about that.
So without going into all that story, because we don't have enough time, let me explain this. People fear change, and people fear the unknown. So we need to get over those fears, and you do that by providing people with good information. We have to reduce layers of government, but it can't be the county coming in trying to force things. This is about everybody in each community understanding what it is that their government is doing for them and what it's costing them. So what happened in Forestville was they had, quite frankly, a rather dysfunctional government that wasn't really delivering the services. And Forestville was one of the highest taxed entities in Chautauqua County.
Wait a minute, everybody says that about their towns.
Yeah, well,
but this is factual.
This is factual.
Not just rumor.
Yeah, so
Okay.
they were looking at a 455% increase. Long story short was I led the Forestville Government Efficiency Task Force, and the county agreed to lend them money in order to avoid this huge tax increase, but they still had a better than 100% tax increase regardless. But part of the agreement with the county legislature was they would look at studying dissolution in the village of Forestville. Okay. And what happened was, as part of the process, is we had people in Forestville that circulated a petition in order to have a vote on dissolution. And this is where it becomes an issue. Statewide, votes on consolidation fail at a 90% rate.
I've lived that life with schools.
So you know what I'm talking about.
I got bullet holes in me
Yeah.
from people that didn't like what we were proposing.
Well, that's the thing. But the bottom line is people were not given good information because there's a flaw in the state law.
That's right.
All the state law says is within 60 days of this petition being certified, a vote has to occur. There is no requirement for a study to be done or for any information to be disseminated to the people that are going to be voting. So again, people vote based on what they read on Facebook and what they hear at the coffee shop. Yeah. And so what we did differently is we engaged the Center for Governmental Research, and we got them to do a study. And even though it was 90% covered by the state, a village like Forestville was still strapped for cash, and $2,500, which is all they need, they didn't have. So we engaged Southern Tier West, and they paid that $2,500. So it didn't cost the people of Forestville anything. Right. And then on top of that, Southern Tier West paid to have the summary of the study sent to each and every voter in the village of Forestville. And we had 2 public meetings, and we gave people the opportunity to ask questions, and we got them to overcome those fears. And in Forestville, they voted not once but twice to dissolve the village government. And those folks now are seeing a 55% decrease in their property taxes.
That's pretty amazing.
That's the path. That's the best path that we have, because I've told people we can cut every non-mandated service out of county government. We can cut the sheriff's road patrol. We can cut our senior services through the Office for the Aging. We can cut our veteran services. We can cut plowing our roads and repairing our roads and bridges. And if we eliminate all of that, that only is going to equate to about a 90-cent savings per thousand on your taxes. But yet the people in Forestville are saving 55%. And quite frankly, that's where the rubber meets the road. Now, we're not forcing anybody to do anything, as I said. The county wants to act strictly in an advisory role and help, because it's a very complicated process. And we have the resources to help people navigate that process. But without going on into all the details, with the Regional Solutions Commission help, we've had 4 votes on dissolution, and 3 of the 4 in Chautauqua County have passed. So with a statewide rate of only 10% success rate, we have a 75% success rate because we have done things differently. And that requires leadership, and that requires patience, and that certainly requires giving people the confidence to know that this information came from a third-party impartial source, and we're not taking a position. I never once took a position in the Village of Forestville as to whether or not they should dissolve. I simply said, this is the information, and please make the best decision that you feel you can. And I'm confident that if we give people good information, they'll make good decisions.
Okay, fair enough. We're getting down to about 3 minutes here, so how about one more topic real quick? Lake Chautauqua, that's been sort of out there. Lake Erie you talked about a little bit, so what about Lake Chautauqua?
Actually, I've been a very strong advocate for Chautauqua Lake, and we only have 2.5 minutes left,
Yeah,
but I'm
I
going
know.
to tell you. Just to give you, here's the issue with Chautauqua Lake. Whether it's cutting the weeds or killing the weeds, that's addressing the symptoms and not addressing the disease. The disease exists in the flow of nutrients into that lake, whether it's from the tributaries leading into the lake or the estimated 50% failure rate of the septic systems around the lake, or any number of other things. And we at the county, through the Soil and Water Conservation District, have actually been addressing the disease, doing stream bank stabilizations, working with farmers to have better land management, to keep their animals out of the water, to make sure that the waste isn't getting into the water. So those are actually the ways that this problem will be solved. This is where we will cure the disease that Chautauqua Lake has. I led a delegation to Washington, D.C. back in March, and we discussed a number of different water-related issues. We actually have hired a lobbyist. We have our own lobbyist here in D.C. Specifically to address water-related issues. This is something that came through my committee, and we led a delegation and met with our federal representatives, met with the EPA, met with the Army Corps of Engineers right at their headquarters in Washington, D.C., and they all said, we've never had a county show up. And I'm proud to say, after being,
Here we are.
after being there in March, by June, the Water Quality Improvement Project for Chautauqua Lake was on a very important list, which is called the 7001 list of the Army Corps of Engineers, which is how you get federal funding. So we are making a difference. It's not as glamorous as saying, hey, pointing to a barge and like, say, hey, look, this is what I'm doing for you. But this is where the problem will be solved.
Okay, wow. I wasn't aware of that. So I say this at every interview. I learn more and more just sitting here listening, so thanks for sharing that. George Borrello, you're running for county executive, and we're down to the last half minute or so. So I'm going to be quiet, and I'm going to let you tell the folks, right at the camera over here that's going to pop up in a second, you tell them whatever you want, why they should vote for you.
Well, I would say this, I've really enjoyed being a county legislator, and I feel that I've been able to get things done. And part of it has been bringing people together and facilitating conversation. And I would ask that you would give me the opportunity to share not only my experience as a legislator, but my experience as a businessman, to bring people together, to look at our issues and address those issues as best as we can. And if we all work together, we will elevate Chautauqua County.
Very good. George, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Folks, you've been watching Destination Chautauqua County. My guest has been George Borrello, who's running for county executive. November 7th should be on your calendar, folks. Every vote makes a difference, so get out there and vote. And you've had the opportunity now to listen to both candidates. It's up to you now. We have one more interview coming up at 4 o'clock, so stay tuned. I'm Doc Hamels, and we'll see you soon. Take care. I've got 172 shows with, I don't even know how many different guests, but the whole thing is being a good listener.